Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Liam Holmes. I'm the CEO of MIS Solutions. And today I have with us two special guests. One is Sandra Reid, and Sandra is the Manager of Data Systems and Analytics for Snellings Walters. Snellings Walters, for anyone who doesn't know, is considered to be one of the largest and most successful independent insurance agencies here in Atlanta. We also have Steve Willie, and Steve Willie is the Chief Operating System and co-founder of Bobby Jones Links. Bobby Jones Links is a golf club management company, and they're considered by many to be one of the most respected companies in the business. So I thought that it'd be really great to kind of hear from Steve and Sandra and in really talking about EOS. EOS stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System. And really, EOS is just a simple set of tools and concepts to help companies achieve their vision and goals. And so a quick disclaimer before we get going though, MIS Solutions, other than a user of EOS ourselves, we don't sell any tools or services or consulting around EOS. We simply put these webinars together really just to help you guys, to help our customers, for anyone who might be struggling and really trying to understand, how to fulfill their business visions and goals, just like Steve has done with his company and Sandra at Snellings Walters. And so with that, I thought maybe we would just jump right in and get started. And so Steve, I think it'd be really awesome if you could kind of tell us a little bit about, how did Bobby Jones Links get started with EOS? What was your journey?
One of the companies we work with had told us a little bit about it. And so the first thing they did was we took that questionnaire. I'm not even sure what it's called. It has 20 questions or 25 questions or so about your business and do you know how you're doing? And when we went through that, if you get a score, in the 80 to 100, you're doing pretty well. And I think our score through those questions was about a 35 or 40, it's like, oh, we need some help. So from that, we decided, we'd gotten away from some of the basics, I think, and so it just helped us when we saw that. It's like, okay, let's learn more about this. And that's when we found an integrator to kind of help us with it, learn more about what EOS was, and hired them to kind of take us through the process. And it really has been beneficial to us to have that.
So Sandra, what was it like for Snellings Walters when they first started with EOS?
Well, when I came over to Snellings Walters, it was in a period of change. The Snellings had just decided to allow other non-family members to be partners in the agency. So we really came in with a growth mindset, and the partners in the agency all band together to figure out how they wanted to move forward. One of them had read Traction and got everybody else on the reading Traction bandwagon. We started off using an integrator and having them come in, and we did the same questions that Steve did. We went through the same process, realized that we could be a lot better than we were, and just hopped on board.
Yeah, so I think this question you guys talk about is the organizational checkup, right?
Yep, that's it. That's right.
Yeah. And so what's really interesting is you go through and you take this organizational checkup, and just like you guys are talking about, you kind of get a score as to where you are, right? But there's a little bit of pain that kind of gets you to that place to begin with, right? You're trying to figure out, how do you take your business to the next level? How do you get everybody in alignment? And along comes the framework, and you start down this sort of organizational checkup route, right? And so I'd really love to hear from each of you in your own perspective. How do you feel like EOS has really been able to help the company align with your goals, and how do you think it's really changed, if you kind of think about where you were and where you are today? Steve, you want to take that one?
Sure. I think the thing that I like the most about it is that you talked about it earlier, this framework now we can work with, and we have things that now when we have goals and achievements, we have a place to put them and we can track them. We can measure. I think we're doing a better job. Anytime you measure something, I think as humans, we all do better when we have a scorecard or scoreboard to watch. And so going through that process of having that, there's just such a great framework from the weekly meetings to the quarterly meetings to the annual meetings type of thing that really sets you up to succeed in a lot of ways. We've tried other platforms, other systems, they're too complicated, in our opinion, to get them all across the finish line. So this one worked for us. We understood it, and then we pushed it out to our clubs as well. So it's been really good for us to have something that makes sense and you can follow. And I would say it's easy, but it makes sense to us. I think that as we go along through the process, it's like, okay, we know where we're going now. So it's helped us, I think, be more organized in many ways.
Sandra, what's your experience been?
Well, I believe that the structure of EOS requires the leadership team to really think about the why, the purpose of the agency or the company, and why we're here, and what we want to achieve. So in the very beginning, we decided that our why was we lead to inspire confidence so that your potential is unleashed. And we really grabbed onto that. And everything that we've done since then has really stemmed from that. And EOS gives us a structure in order to make those changes, put them into action. Like Steve said, we cascade them down throughout the agency. The framework is there, and it has allowed us to grow and be very successful using EOS. So we really appreciate it.
I know for us, when we first started using EOS, and I guess really even maybe before that, the reason why we started looking at finding something to help us was we could see as we were going to continue to grow, that alignment was going to be key, right? And communication is a difficult thing. It's hard to get everybody on the same page. And, all of us come from different backgrounds. We worked at different companies, and, people have different ideas and thoughts. And, everybody kind of pulls a little bit in a different direction in the beginning. And as you grow, what you find, or what we found, was we had a little bit of chaos where everybody had lots of really good ideas, but how do you capture those ideas in some meaningful way or in some framework to be able to really get the best out of it? And, for us, when we came to EOS, we were kind of trying to find that MIS way. We were trying to find that, that common terminology, that framework that we could all align to, so that, all of our ideas would be able to be captured, and that we could all kind of read from that same sheet of music, if you will, right? And I know for us, that was kind of the impetus in how we got there. I'm curious to hear from each of you. EOS has a collection of tools, whether it's the People Analyzer or the BTO or whatever they are. I'm curious, from your perspective, which tools have you found to be really impactful or very effective? And which ones have you really seen make the most change?
I believe the 5x5 quarterly conversations moved us away from having an annual review and made it more of a conversation with our employees to see where they're at and see where they want to grow and where they want to be. And it made it less confrontational and more intentive. So we intended to do the 5x5. It's not a reactionary, oh my gosh, it's the end of the year. It's all in the framework. So that helped us keep that in line. And also the People Analyzer, when we figured out our core values and have some common goal to measure everybody by, it made it so much easier to see who is in line with the Snellings Walters values and who is not. So it made that process much easier, both hiring and then deciding if someone is not a good fit.
Yeah. So you just brought up two really great tools, the 5x5 and the People Analyzer. For anybody who doesn't know what those are, at least at a really high level, could you give me one or two sentences, like what are those two things?
Yeah, a 5x5 is a quarterly conversation that you have in lieu of an annual review. It takes 15 minutes. It's 5 minutes talking about you and what you've done for the last quarter, 5 minutes about what the agency could do different, and then rating on the core values of where you stand. So it's a pulse to keep on your team to make sure that everybody is happy and still engaged and meets up with our core values.
Really helpful when you have a tool like that, where you can, have a conversation and use a framework to help you have that conversation, so that it doesn't kind of turn into, hey, how are you? Are you okay? Is everything good? Do you need anything, right? Because those conversations can get really generic without, some real, framework to it, right?
Right. And the people analyzer, we take each of our core values and we measure people whether they display the core values all the time, which is a plus, some of the time, which is a plus minus, or none of the time, which is a minus. And we've put in, defined our core values and given the way people should act if they engage in the values, and then the anti-values. So it's really clear, if you're displaying one of the values, it's really clear to you. And if you're not, it's not a confrontation, it's just a fact. So it helps people see where they can improve very clearly and in a much better environment.
A lot of companies have core values, but if you were to ask those people, what are those core values? A lot of times people can't tell you what their own core values are, right? And so, it really makes you wonder how alive and well, and, are those core values, or, are they really just, plaques on a wall kind of a thing? And, I think EOS does a really good job of trying to bring those core values alive. And, as you say, Sandra, using the people analyzer to actually score people against your core values. I know for us was a significant impact to our culture in a positive way, because we really could see, were people, living out our core values? Did they understand what they were? Could they name them, right? And it really kind of drew attention to our core values to make sure that, we were a company that we wanted to be, not just a company that was doing business, if you will, right?
Yes, and it is amazing how many people that we hire on to the agency that come in and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe you are actually the you said you were during the interview. It's kind of shocking to come into a company and them, not have fluffed up, everything about themselves and actually not be that person. So we're really proud that we live our core values every day, and all of us do.
Steve, how about at Bobby Jones Links? How do you guys sort of see these tools? Have you guys noticed that there's been one or two really standouts that have kind of helped out?
Well, Sandra mentioned the 555s and the people analyzer, which really is all about people, and people are what it's all about, right? And that's it's all about our people. But I think the other things I would say is the L10 meetings, the level 10 meetings, weekly meetings. We do a pretty good job of that and stay on track with that format, and that's helped us a lot, having the weekly goals, and along with that, just the importance of that. We do a 90-minute meeting, and some people will say, 90-minute meeting? What, are you crazy? So it's like, well, as we all know and learned, that 90 minutes saves you so much time during the week. It's so worth having that 90-minute session together, because it saves you time in other areas. So it's not a waste of time for 90 minutes. So we do that really well. And part of that, I think the rocks, we all set these annual goals. And with the annual goals, what we've learned even recently, just as a reminder, is that those rocks should help you get to that annual goal. And so sending those rocks and setting those up, those are 90-day goals, are really important. To not only don't just create a rock to create a rock or an item, make sure it really fits with the annual goal, so we can get to that annual goal based on all these rocks we do each quarter. So that's been a big help to us too, to just kind of make sure that we're going in the right direction, we're getting things done, getting things accomplished to meet our annual goals. So that, to me, those are a couple that were really helpful.
And I know for us, the L10s, we started in our leadership team, and it gave us kind of a framework for how to run our leadership meetings. And then what it did is it allowed each member of our leadership team to go to, their teams that they manage and instill that same, framework of how they run their meetings at a department level, and so on as it kind of worked its way down the organization, right? Yeah. And it didn't take very long before all of our meetings had the same framework. We all used the same terminology. We all started setting rocks or goals, right? And what it really did, at least in at MIS, it really got us all in alignment pretty quickly because we our operations meeting looked a lot like our finance meeting, our HR meetings, our projects cadence meetings, and so we all started to use that same framework, and I believe it really created a sense of cohesiveness, right? And then I love what you said, Steve, about rocks. Rocks are these 90-day goals, and these 90-day goals, these quarterly goals support your annual goals. And so it's really a way of formalizing how do you set your goals, and then how do you track your progress towards those goals. And so I think we all know, right, when you set those goals and you really track your progress to those goals, you're probably more likely going to meet your goals, right? What kind of cultural impacts do you think that it's made on each of your organizations? Has this been a really, a struggle where you feel like you've had to kind of pull people along and get them to read traction and get them to participate and share ideas, or do you feel like alignment has come pretty quickly? Did you push? Did you pull? How did it go?
Well, it wasn't real smooth. It creates a rocky environment to begin with. You're inviting people into a new way of working. The L10 allows every employee to say what their issues is in front of everyone, report on their scores, hold each other personally accountable. It's a new day in a new environment. So absolutely, we went through some growing pains with that. It took, 5 years maybe for everybody for it to really be noticeable. But we built our culture from EOS. I mean, we built it on the framework. That's where it came from. So we used the tools in EOS to decide where we wanted to go and make goals to reach where we wanted to be. So all of the tools has helped us in that way. And now I believe our culture is, it is exactly where we want it to be. Our people are great. And we're just really happy with how our culture is as it relates to EOS, and that's a big part of it.
How about you, Steve? I'd love to hear, particularly with you guys, you guys have all these clubs and golf courses, and you kind of have a small central office, and there's a lot of cats to be herded there, right? And so how are you guys able to really get that instilled, and what effect do you think it really had on your culture?
I think, Liam, you said, if you have the values, you can have them on a wall or in a book, but what EOS does is brought them to life, where, you're using them daily, weekly. And so having those processes of the 555, the people analyzer, you're really engaged, and it makes you pretty much put those things in place. And it's just becomes part of what you do on a daily basis. I think the leadership team jumped on board pretty quickly with EOS. When you're taking it down to the club level, though, because we have all these different clubs, it's harder for sure. And it's really dependent upon your leader at that club, your general manager, to make sure that gets pushed down. And we help coach and train, but your GM is key. And then this EOS 1, when you can get the results after their meeting, how that after your L10, you get an email about the meeting. So the people that are operations people over their particular clubs get that report back as they're part of the meeting. They have them in there. So that's helpful too. We know they did do the meeting and here's what they talked about a little bit. So that helps. So that EOS 1, when we got the software, we used the manual program for a long time. Finally, we heard about this EOS 1 where it's online. That's been a big help to our group, that we know, okay, now we can at least track how these clubs, they're over 12 states and 40 properties trying to do it. We're getting a little better out there.
I don't know that there's any perfection, and I'm not sure that you're ever done, right? But you're trying to work within this framework, but at least you have some reference material that you can go back and say, here's what we're trying to do, here's our common terminology, here's how we're going to operate. And I know one of the things that we found was at some point we had the bulk of people at MIS that knew a lot about EOS. And so those people who either didn't quite get it or they weren't quite operating in that framework, EOS sort of allowed us to hold them accountable and bring them into the fold. Whereas before, where everybody didn't have a common language and they didn't have a common framework, it was really hard to kind of get that vision all the way down from the leadership team, all the way down to the person actually doing the job. And yet we're all responsible for our annual goals, and we were all trying to pull in the same direction. But how do you do that when we all speak a different language, right? It was really hard for us. And if I was to ask you guys to think back on your journey, and you would think about a company who is maybe either considering EOS, or maybe they're just at the point where they're like, hey, we feel some vibrations on the wheels. We're not exactly sure what it is, and we're maybe not even sure what to do about it. What advice would you give a company like that who's just right in the beginning? Maybe they've never even heard of EOS.
I would say jump in with the highest leadership, the top level, and read the book. Consider your why, your reasons for being, your what your culture wants to be, and then commit to it. And as you go through your L10 meetings, you'll find that your team, your top team, finds a lot of similarity and camaraderie, and they buy into the EOS process. And once you're fully bought in, then you start at the next level leaders. What makes EOS great and what makes it work is the commitment of the top level leaders. And once you go through 6 months or 90 days, 6 months of EOS, and you are sure that is what you want your company to do, then you're stronger enough to cascade that through your company and allow your top level leaders. It just goes down level by level. And if everybody's walking on the same page together, then you can bring the people up that may not be as excited about having L10 meetings and 555s, So it really is a commitment, but it's a good one, and it will help your business to grow. I mean, you grow your people, you grow your business. So it's well worth it. Absolutely.
And it makes sense, at least when I think about it in our terms. Everybody's a little bit skeptical, right? But I think, at least in our case, when people started to realize that their ideas, meant something to somebody, and that they could see some of those things being implemented, and they could see the company being intentional, and they could see that we were making progress, I feel like those things were the things that let everyone buy in, right? When they started to see progress, all of a sudden, people who were maybe resisting, or people who were like, oh my gosh, this is just another thing, they really started to tune in and think about, hey, I actually see value in this. I see how this is good for me, right? And so I think that's great. Steve, what do you think? What advice would you give somebody who's really just starting out, or just thinking about it, or like I said to Sandra, maybe never even heard of EOS?
Yeah. Well, for us, I go back to the organizational checkup a little bit, because that's a really nice set of questions. And we've actually even used that for clubs, and trying to get them to hire us to help them, and say, is your club in this position? Do you know all these answers? How are you doing these things? And if they're not doing them, then maybe we can help them as a potential managing their golf club, for them, because they're not doing these things. This is what you all need to be doing, those kind of things. So that's an idea for that's more of a more business thought than why would you do this? But I think too, the reading that book, What the Heck is EOS? It's a short version of Traction. If they don't want to read Traction, it's a little longer. That little book, What the Heck is EOS, could get them kind of excited and intrigued by it. And then you can learn a little bit about, what it's about. The other thing I'll say, if you're having trouble as a company with accountability, EOS is wonderful when it comes to accountability, because you don't want to let down your peers. And so as you come to these meetings together, you're sort of like, did you do what you said you would do? Did you do your to-dos for the week? Yeah, how are you progressing on your rocks? And so if you're having a little bit of trouble with accountability, this is certainly something that you kind of feel like you're accountable to each other to get your portion done, which I really like that part.
Yeah, it's very visible, right? You can see who those top performers are. And Steve, I know for us at MIS, shining that bright, intense spotlight on everyone, what we found was that, one, everyone knew that they were in the spotlight and everybody knew what their commitments were. And I think at that point, people really had a choice to make. Were they going to step up and were they going to embrace it? And, were they going to, be the rock star that they knew that they could be? Or was it the catalyst to get them to step away and say, hey, this is really accountable and I'm not sure I want to be that accountable and maybe this isn't the place for me. But I really felt like it separated, the yolk from the eggs for us, right? And it was a great catalyst. I mean, it was going to happen anywhere, right? But this was a great way to really, force that and get that down that road. And it instilled that culture of accountability for us, which, quite frankly, we've been trying to do that for years anyway. It was just very difficult to do because, it really felt like herding cats, honestly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So one last thought for you guys, and I'll share and ask you to do the same, is one of the things that we found was that we really like doing business with companies who are EOS based, because it actually sort of had this knock-on effect for us where, we knew what rocks were, we knew what L10s were, we knew that they were accountable, they knew that we were accountable, and it really helped us, align, their VTO to our VTO. We were all pulling in that same direction. And so I know for us, once we realized, what the benefit of EOS was, we actually started looking for customers that were EOS based because we could clearly recognize that those were going to be some of our best customers. Do you see value in doing business with other companies who are EOS based?
Well, I mentioned earlier the ones that started it with us was our broker of our employee benefits broker, and they were using EOS, and they're the ones that sort of got us started on it. So that we do work with them. And of course, you guys, your company, MIS, I think it does help because, like you said, the language is the same. When we do our quarterly reviews with you all, I can see we're, very similar language and how you do things, which is great.
Well, yeah, we have several people that we've actually turned on to EOS. Billy Potter is our CEO, and he's really charged up about it, and it has been such a success with us that we can't help talking about it. So other people have joined EOS to, alongside Snellings Walters, and with you guys, with MIS, it was a great to have you as a partner with EOS. When we first started, when we were onboarding, we actually did L10s with MIS. So we had, put up all the issues on the board and talk about them. So it really helped us on board, and it made our experience that much better. Speaking the language that you speak, having the ability to tell you what our issues were, which we're so used to doing, and just put them up on the board and figure them out one at a time. So it really, really helped with that too.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys both. I really appreciate you, kind of sharing your insights and your knowledge and your experiences with EOS. And, I know you guys both run in amazing companies. And so, for you guys to take a few minutes out to really just talk about your background has really been so helpful. So, I appreciate both of you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you, Liam.
Yeah. Appreciate you doing this.
Anytime.